today I am dressed Regency, and there is a reason for this. It's because it is my favorite author's birthday coming up. Woo! So, happy birthday to Sir Walter Scott. So that's why today's topic is going to be 18th century base, Regency era. I made this dress so I could spend Sir Walter Scott's birthday kind of looking a little like someone who might have picked up a book of his in the day. So, but yeah. So I wanted to talk a little bit about our perceptions of writing, specifically in the 1800s and the way that we look at authors and things like that. I did my capstone course on Victorian periodicals. So we talked a lot about publishing. We talked about the transition from Scott's marketing to Dickens' marketing. It's been a long time since I read those articles, so I'm sorry if I get anything mixed up. But first of all, I think when we think about back then writing, we think that people just wrote their first draft, got it published, everything was great, but it was actually really difficult. And I don't know if a lot of you are into Jane Austen stuff, but one of her books she actually sold before she was published, and like it just nothing happened. Like she sold the book and never heard back. Eventually she got her manuscript back and it was published, but it wasn't easy, and writing has never been easy. The way Sir Walter Scott got famous is Scott started writing poetry, which people are confused when I talk about his poetry and they're like, what? Sir Walter Scott writes poetry? But actually that's what he's famous for. And Jane Austen herself was annoyed when he started writing books because she's like, he's already famous for poetry. He has no business writing novels, but she's like, but I'm probably gonna like his novels even though I don't want to. So that's a little just like the environment that was happening during this time. So just some things, marketing tactics, rumors, stuff like that. First of all, one of the big rumors that you might not be familiar with, but if you know anything about literature, you might think that Sir Walter Scott didn't make any money. This is false. A lot of people have this idea that he kind of failed because he died in a lot of debt. And it is true that he died in a lot of debt. But what happened was he made a ton of money, built himself a friggin' castle. It's still there. It's Abbotsford. I want to go there someday so bad. But yeah, he wrote enough books, made enough money to build himself a castle. He was basically like the J.K. Rowling of his day, very popular. But his friends who helped him get published ended up going deep into debt. And Sir Walter Scott wanted to help them out. So even though he was still, paying for his castle and all that, he agreed that he would bail these people out. And he was determined to write them out. Write enough books that he would be able to bail his friends out. Unfortunately, he didn't make it, and so when he died, his family was in debt, and Abbotsford eventually had to become a public site in order to be preserved. That's his castle. So, sure, he died in debt, but he also built a freaking castle. And one of the main reasons that he died in debt was pirating, alright? So, pirating is a problem now. Pirating was also a problem in the 1800s, which you're like, who on earth would take the effort to put all that type in to pirate books? It happened. So in the Americas, where they're like, hey, we're not part of England, so we can do what we want. And so they would just, take books. They're like, yeah, Sir Walter Scott's great, and then publish them and never pay Sir Walter Scott a dime. So that's one of the ways that Sir Walter Scott lost a heck ton of money, was people pirating his books. So something that we can learn about that is pirating is a problem for authors. Please make sure you pay your authors so that they don't die in debt. And don't pirate things off the internet. If you're like, I don't have money and I can't get to the library or something like that, talk to the author. I actually saw an author the other day who her books weren't showing up in libraries, and she was like, tell me and I can get you an affordable copy. So don't pirate books, okay? It is a big part of the reason why Sir Walter Scott ended up dying in debt. With that, One of Sir Walter Scott's marketing tactics, one of the reasons why his books were so successful is, I'm not sure what extent this was used. I haven't seen enough like big important like articles on it, but he wrote himself negative reviews actually. So another thing to learn from people who wrote in the past is that a lot of times I think we have this idea that negative reviews are a bad thing and we don't want negative reviews and scary, oh no, those 1 stars. But like, actually, people are interested in what people hate. So like, if they're like, wow, like that's kind of a violent response, you got to admit there's a little bit of curiosity. And I know like it doesn't always work that way, especially if you're just getting a bunch of negative reviews. It makes people like, eh. But there are occasions in which negative reviews can be a good thing and responding well to them. So Sir Walter Scott would leave himself his own negative reviews to make people kind of like interested, like what's the hype about this book, and to just get it out there. Because again, a bad review is better than no review. Okay? So that's another thing we can take away from Sir Walter Scott's writing career is that, yeah, bad reviews, better than no review, and you can even use bad reviews to your advantage. Or if you're Sir Walter Scott, make up bad reviews. So that's another thing that we can learn from Sir Walter Scott. Also, to dispel another rumor, a lot of people think that people like Scott and Dickens were paid by the word. His books are long, and it is exhausting to think that, like, he would have handwritten all of this. But, like, it's actually, like, that's just Sir Walter Scott's style, or Dickens' style. Dickens, some of them may seem long because they're done in installments, piece by piece. So sometimes, you know, if you want your story to last longer, like, I don't know if any of you are Chihayafuru fans, but, like, she is making more money by making it longer. Not, like, by the word, but, like, by the chapter. So that is a case for some authors. Less so with Dickens. Less so with Scott, more with Dickens. But also, just to completely dispel that rumor, Dickens published in his own magazine eventually. So, like, Tell Two Cities, completely his own. He wouldn't pay himself by the word. He was in control of his paycheck there. I mean, besides, like, you know, the money he had to pay for the magazine, all of that. So yeah, not paid by the word. So as we think back, the ideas that we have on old authors might be different. So, speaking about Dickens, one interesting thing about him too is that after Sir Walter Scott died in debt because of pirating, Dickens is actually responsible for the celebrity author. Like, everyone being excited about the author. He kind of created a lot of celebrityism generally because the household name, the book that everyone was reading, the person everyone talked about, Sir Walter Scott, ended up dying in debt. So that freaked Dickens out because he's like, I don't want to die in debt. So he actually, people in America were still like, why do we care, England? You're not us. And so they ended up still pirating Dickens' books, but what he did, so he did not fall into what happened to Sir Walter Scott, was went on tours, okay? And so people in America would pay to see Dickens and hear him speak. So he would give, like, speeches. So kind of the idea we have of a book tour came from Dickens responding to what happened to Scott. And so, because of that, Dickens ended up becoming, like, huge. He toured lots of places, gave lots of speeches, and ended up making a freak ton of money. And that's kind of how Dickens became popular, was mastering the whole marketing thing. So we do kind of have old authors from the 1800s to thank for the way that we think about celebrityism, marketing, all of that. Because Sir Walter Scott did some marketing things, but, like, Dickens really mastered marketing in order to make books a little more hype, a little more kind of what they are today, because a lot of people had, like, a resistance to reading novels in that era because they're like, oh, girls who read novels, even though, like, everyone did it. But yeah, it was cooler to read philosophy. But yeah. So those are just some things about publishing, things that I know about publishing in the older times. About Sir Walter Scott, just like personally, he is one of my favorite authors because I feel like he's mostly uncorrupted. Like, Dickens left his poor wife and her many children. And a lot of authors just have a ton of crap in their background, but Sir Walter Scott was surprisingly wholesome. I even read a quote from him recently that talked about, like, people who marry their first loves, it often doesn't work out, and he's actually glad he didn't marry his first crush. Showing like he appreciated his wife, sounded like he had a good relationship with his daughter. There's a lot of fun stories about that. Like, I think she asked him, don't quote me on this, but I think she asked him for a section of the library to, like, meet guys, and so he gave her the witchcraft section. Which is very Sir Walter Scott-esque. But another thing about his books is, like, for example, in Ivanhoe, he does a good job of, like, he writes about a Jew, which during those time, like, people were very racist against Jews, and the Jewish character in this, even though he does have some racism in it because that was the times, the main character in this is a very strong, independent Jewish woman who totally calls people out on victim blaming, so very progressive for his time. Also, I'm convinced one of the characters in this has major ADHD, but he's also, like, the bravest character. So, Sir Walter Scott is just a great author, and, like, most of what we think of as, like, being an author, being famous, all of that comes from Sir Walter Scott, because he was huge in his day, made a freak ton of money, was very popular, became, like, a household name, I suppose. Everybody read his books. And so that's kind of like, think of him as the father of the modern novel and the hype about novels. Kind of the way J.K. Rowling is, like, the mother of YA literature. He's, like, the father of novels, generally. So there were novels before him, but he's the one who really made them hype. So, think about Sir Walter Scott today, and if you want to read a Sir Walter Scott book, well, his birthday's 15th, sorry. I especially recommend Ivanhoe because it's kind of, like, the easiest to read. Like, most people, when they want to read a Sir Walter Scott book, will go for Ivanhoe first. My favorite, though, is Rob Roy, which is better, I think, if you read Kidnapped first, because it gives you the necessary historical background, which Kidnapped is inspired by Rob Roy, Kidnapped is by Robert Louis Stevenson. But yeah, just very fun book. Also very strong female character in this. Or if you just want to go easy but historical, I freaking love this book. It was written for his 6-year-old grandson, but it's just like the history of Scotland. So it's really fun. Probably his easiest book to read. Also nonfiction, but, like, if you are looking for ideas of, like, court intrigue, and, like, real medieval events and things like that, this is actually a great book for writing inspiration. So, I love this book. Okay, but yeah, there's also Red Gauntlet, which one of my friends is obsessed with, because it's got some funny things in it. The ending to me was a little flat, but I do really enjoy this one. And then Waverly. The Waverly was, like, his original, the OG, which is pretty funny. Also just fun adventure books. But yeah, so that is Sir Walter Scott, and those are some things we can learn about publishing from the olden times. I hope you enjoy his birthday, and I will see you later. Like, comment, subscribe, comment about your favorite old-timey author, and I will post another video later. Bye!